Hello everyone, and welcome yet again. This is a bonus chat of the week, and I will be joined, sorry, I'm going to readjust just because I can. I'm going to be joined by an audiobook narrator in just a little bit because usually I do my weekly authors chats, and in those cases we usually just talk about our work, books, writing, publishing, and all that kind of side of things. But today, because I'll be joined by a narrator, we're going to kind of keep our focus a little towards the production and creation of audiobooks. And I see my co-host. See if she sees the invite. Okay, perfect. Says I invited her. 3, 2, 1. See if we can get this. It's always interesting trying to always set things up. Hello.
Hello. My camera thing is.
I
Let's see
see.
here.
Yeah, I was gonna say I see your little icon. I don't see you yet, but yeah, sometimes, and I don't know why. Sometimes that happens. So if you know how to figure that out, because I don't. But yeah, for anybody who's chiming in at the moment, I'm gonna actually let my co-host this week, because you've seen a couple of my authors chats before, I think, Blanca. Yeah,
Yep.
so I'm gonna let you introduce yourself because instead of another author or a book talker, I'm gonna be talking to a narrator.
Oh yeah. Right now.
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
You got
Um, yeah. So I am a narrator, and I love to do like the fantasy genre and just kind of go on adventures. And I grew up in theater, so that's kind of like my background. And when I had kids, I just didn't have time for going to rehearsals and going to like all the fun stuff. So I kind of took a break while I was raising them and decided to get back into it and found audiobook narration and fell in love with it. So,
That's so much fun. Yes. For those who are joining in and do not know, Blanca is actually the narrator of my most recent audiobook. I wonder if you can see it a little closer. It's the 12 Tasks, and that is book 1 of the Jet Chronicles. And so that's why we're kind of chit-chatting today, because it's actually my first time being able to see you face to face live. We've kind of
yeah.
communicated different means, be it emails and messaging and other uh, ways, but this is kind of fun to see you and meet you this way.
Yeah. Get a chat
And
and talk.
exactly. And the Jet Chronicles is for anybody who's new. That is my young adult. It's a portal fantasy series. It falls into other genres and subgenres like epic fantasy, adventure based, questing, sword and sorcery, noble bright, clean fantasy, goes on and on and on. But with that said, it's a lot of fun because it is a magical multiverse with 12 worlds full of magic, multiple dimensions, all sorts of beast beings and the like pulled from mythos worldwide. And because it's a wide cast, of kind of characters, it was interesting for me trying to figure out who I should approach and mesh with for this particular project. But I actually, and for anybody who's the author side of things, go through the platform called ACX, and that's the one that supports Audible and those, and also iTunes audiobooks. And I actually approached her because I had open calls for one of my works, but I fell in love with her voice, and I knew I wanted her for one of my projects. And so, yeah, I was so glad that it ended up working out.
Yeah, that was exciting. We had just moved, and when you messaged me, I was like, I was going to take a little break from audiobook recording, just try and get everything set up. And
Mhm.
when I read your first email, and then I was flipping through the other book, and I was like, oh, this is really good writing. Like I like this. And then we had that message exchange, and it was like, oh, here's the other book, and then I was reading through the 12 tasks, and I was like, okay, this is fun. This is like all the characters and just like, yeah. So
And I love it. And for me, I'm curious, and it's so bad. I'm so bad about this. I'm still rather unfamiliar with listening to audiobooks. So trying to find narrators for someone who doesn't usually listen to books in that particular format, I didn't know what people wanted out of a narrator. I could only guess, what would make me happy. But
Right.
I like the approach of finding someone who is able to make a bunch of different characters sound unique and to come alive, and you really have that talent.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. Yeah, all the different characters, and I loved how realistic they were when it comes down to like, the characters that you have. They had this natural way of talking to you, if that makes
Yes.
sense. I don't know. Where it was just like you could when you're reading it, you could hear their voices. So it wasn't like I really didn't really have to go and like search too much. It was like I would read their words and I'd be like, oh, this sounds like in my head, this sounds like the character from such and such. And it was kind of fun to just be like, okay.
Yeah, I remember one of the emails you sent me was we were trying to figure out some of the. I have a one world is a world that has, I guess the term in art is beastmen, but essentially what I was thinking of when I was creating this um, race of being is Egyptian gods, and so having the animal-headed humanoid body kind of creatures and having a lot of fun creating them. And I remember one of the rulers, because there was three in the book in this particular kingdom, and one of the rulers is a beaver-headed beaver-headed guy. And I just remember you were like, "Oh, can I make him sound kind of like this?" And it was so much fun trying to like figure out what his voice would sound. And I love that. I love that.
Yeah, that was fun.
So you how many audiobooks have you created so far? Because you said you fell in love with doing this, I guess, relatively recently. I mean,
Mhm.
how I'm assuming you're also filming your studio, or else your room looks really cool.
Yeah, yeah. It's the only place where I have like set lighting. Everywhere else in the house, it like changes. And so then I can't really, plan how the lighting's going to work and if you can see me and if the shadows are everywhere. So, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I'm at the
fun.
mercy of the fact that I have windows. So depending on it, with the lighting outside depends on the hue of everything else and what you can see in the background. But I
Yep.
try. I try my best. But
Yeah.
yeah, so as audiobook narrator, how many have you done so far?
Yeah, so this will be my third audiobook that I've done. And the other two were more of like the well, one's like a I guess Scottish, Irish folklore um kind of thing. And then the first one was more like normal people, everyday life. And so I didn't get to have fun with a lot of characters. Yeah.
I mean, each book has its own vibe, but
Yep.
I do like this one because when I'm trying to explain this particular series to people, I'm like, it's hard to pin down. It's a multiverse. There's lots of things going on. There's a lot of creatures and entities, and again, trying to figure out who would be able to try to take on that feat too, because there's a lot of different kind of voices that come from
Hmm.
characters, um, beast and being, because the
Right.
main character has a gift called the gift of tongue, so she can communicate with any other intelligent being, no matter what language is their native language. And so that's a lot of characters that you have to communicate with.
Right. Yeah. My YouTube feed is like searching different characters. I'm like, like throughout the time, I was like horse that talks, and you like type it into YouTube, and then like I would like listen through all the different characters, and I was like, no, that one sounds like it fits.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it. Yeah, it's always, yeah, it is interesting because when I read, I'm reading and working with the book, um, I kind of, it's, I don't know, the way my brain works, it's, I kind of hear their unique voices, or at least what I'm going for, but it is something else entirely when you have a totally different person reading out those characters and truly making them come to life, because I cannot be my own narrator. I'm so bad at accents and everything. Hello,
Yeah.
hello.
It's
Yeah, I'm just
hello.
yeah, I was just saying things pop up. But yeah, so that's cool. And you, I know, following your TikTok, you do seem to like a lot of fantasy stuff in general anyways. And I don't know if you consider yourself a cosplayer or just a costumer or distinguish at all. Like I love putting on costumes and getting into the mood of things, but you have some fancy ones.
Yeah, no, I am a cosplayer. And it's one of those things like when I first moved to Minnesota, and I found out there was like Ren Fair and these other
Mhm.
things. And I loved it, and I loved dressing up and going to conventions and doing that kind of stuff. And my kids are really into it, so that's always fun. And it's funny because when I went for the first like 4 years, I went to Renfest with just me and my oldest son, and finally we convinced my husband, like, no, you have to come. And he never dresses up. He is more of your computer, very, very like logical, mellow
Like
person. And I'm like,
counterbalance, like
yeah,
counterbalance.
exactly. And so this year we went there, we were walking around, and someone was like, people kept laughing and going like, ah, you are dressed up. And I kept looking at him in his jeans and t-shirt, and I was like, he's not dressed up. And then I finally looked down at his shirt, and it was a unicorn, and it said, it said, I'm here as an angry, bitter unicorn. And I was like, oh, he is. Yep, he's dressed up. So
Hey,
yeah.
I understand. Sometimes some people are more into that than others. So when you do dress up as characters, do you create your own voices for your personas you pick up as the cosplay side of things since you're good at that?
Yeah, yeah. So this year I went kind of as like a Maleficent type person, with like
Hmm.
the black feathers and the horns and whatnot. And so I used more of like the Queen Alamandria voice, where it's like the lower register and more of like
Hmm.
the, yeah. And so that was fun. I got to walk around and get my picture taken with some kids and stuff. So yeah. And then
Yeah.
my husband laughs because I have a wall of wigs and like all different kinds of, it's like all different kinds of cosplay stuff. And he was like, I remember the first time I posted a cosplay video on here, he was like, you need to pick a niche, because if you're going to be a narrator in here, people aren't going to want to see you dressing up in costumes. That might come off as kind of weird. And I was like, well, if you know me, you know I am weird.
Yeah. You gotta just be who you are and people will hopefully get it. And I do understand when it comes to algorithms, there
Right.
is something to say you don't want to be too broad, but if you have one, two, potentially three very big interests, and yes, one's your kind of career of being a narrator, but it's still you'll find your little pockets of relatability and groups that want to just follow you and enjoy you. And I think I could be wrong. Someone out there can correct me, but people who enjoy fantasy in different facets. So be it
Hmm.
books or dressing up as, fantasy, going to cons, I do think there is an overlap.
Yeah, I've seen a huge connection with people who like fantasy and like fantasy books and cosplay. Like there seems to be a pretty big strong, like people are like, I've always wanted to live in this world and dress like this and do this. And it's kind of like a nice little outlet where you don't, like if you dress up and you go to the grocery store and certain things, you get looks and uh you know,
Well,
but when you
I will admit, I had lived in New Orleans for about 8 years. In that city, the only people who like give you a second look are the tourists.
that's
you
true.
can
Yeah, that is true.
That's one of the few places that you could walk in a full costume grocery shopping and people be like, it's just another day, it's fine.
Right. Yeah. I lived in LA for a little while, and that's how it was. Like no one no, like they didn't think about anything. They would just see you and be like, cool costume.
Yeah.
And here in Minnesota, we were heading to Renfest, and I had forgotten to grab, like, I can't remember what I forgot. And so we went to the gas station, and I had to go run in my full costume and everything. And um, they kind of gave a double look, like, what is she? It's not Halloween. And then they look at me and they're like, oh, you're going up to the Renfest, and I was like,
Mhm,
yep,
mhm, mhm.
yeah. But you got to go to Dragon Con.
I
That
did.
was pretty
I did.
awesome.
That was the first time this past fall to go to Dragon Con and my first con. So that was one of those rip the band-aid off kind of experiences because I kind of in my head was gearing up to what it was in all its glory, but still when I went there it was totally a different experience than what I expected. There was a lot going on, like a lot going on, but it was so much fun because I call myself a costumer. I either, I create my own costumes ish, but I don't literally sew them. I hodgepodge them together or whatnot. But yeah, the true cosplayers out there, they look fantastic.
Hmm.
But yeah, I was invited to be on a book talk panel there, and that was a really cool experience because some of the faces I see here a lot on the platform, I got to actually meet in person and kind of we just had our little time together one morning, and it was just a lot of fun to talk about this and at least for the writer side, how to utilize this platform to help market yourself in books. But But yeah, I never thought of Dragon Con, and originally having been from Georgia, hearing it for years, never thought of using a con like that as a way to be a place to buy books or sell books or do book signings. I just had no idea that that was part of it. No idea.
Right. Right. Yeah, I was
So
telling my husband, I was like, yeah, you get to be a narrator. And then like I got invited to do the Simple Signings ball. And he was like, really, going to a ball is part of your job? I was like, yes.
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 No, I
Yeah.
was gonna. There's so many fun ways, like when you're in the bookish area in different ways, narrator or writer, that you can make excuses ish that it's for writing purposes. It's for writing
Mhm.
purposes. I was actually on it might have been Facebook, and someone was posting about how this giant I'm trying to think. It's not wasn't a castle, but something castle like in Wales was for sale for like $500,000, and it's like a full I forgot how many roomed structure with a moat and everything. And I was like, I see a writing retreat in the future.
Right? Yes. Yeah,
can
that'd
I
be epic.
can I use it as a write off and create a writing retreat?
Right? I saw we have a question about three interests to share on Book Talk. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. In the comments, three interests to share on Book Talk, like reading, narrating, cosplaying. Yep. Yeah, I found that three is pretty much like very manageable. It keeps your feed not too
Yeah, not too.
cluttered.
Mhm.
But I'm horrible because I get sucked into everything. I'll say like, oh, someone's doing resin work, and all of a sudden I'm like, follow, and yeah.
But I guess that's why some people have two accounts. One's their personal for, whatever guilty pleasure you're into, and the other one is for pure business. I I do what you're not supposed to do, and I'm on all the platforms as an author. And so, because of that, I really don't have the separation of personal and work. I try to keep, for the most part, work based on the platforms. But there are regrets
Mhm.
because I'm like, man, I know if I engage in this thing, which I'm interested in just as a person,
Hi, Paige.
I would have so much fun. But that would also mess up the algorithm. Always fighting this algorithm.
Right? Yeah, so
No,
true.
but yeah, no, that's I've enjoyed watching your videos, and like I said, the connection of costuming and fantasy, I think is pretty close. I've been asked, but I've never created a costume based off one of my characters. Um, but I've also realized that when it comes to describing clothing,
Hi,
I'm
Jen.
not as rich detail or have a lot of rich detail in many scenarios than other authors. For whatever reason, I just don't think it's that important. They're wearing clothes, but I don't go like into terrible like detail of like the gauntlets and all this kind of stuff. So, would you
Mhm.
ever cosplay based off a character of a book? And if so, what character?
Pretty much anything I can get my hands on.
I love it.
I'd love to do one of the animal-headed ones because, to make like a mask and then do like a fun, outfit. That'd be pretty fun.
That would be kind of cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like the idea of it, but again, I have no idea where it would begin. I used to do paper mache, so if I did do one of the interspecies, I would, I could probably paper mache a mask. It would probably
Right?
hot and heavy.
Yeah. Probably all
Probably
sweaty.
not a lot of fun to wear around, but
Hmm.
yeah.
Hi, Calissa.
Hey, see, you have a good fan base. I like it. I like that.
Oh, these are like all my book talk friends, and just we like to nerd out about books.
That's
So yeah.
exactly why I love this
Yeah.
platform. It is such a cool platform to meet and talk, and you can learn a lot of things, and then also find people who love what you love, and so you have someone to talk to whatever it is you love about, and not, let's say, your fiance who's just like, I haven't read the book. Why are you telling me it piece by piece? I was like, I need someone to talk to.
Right? I'll
You're
follow
not.
him around. I feel so bad because he'll be like doing stuff and like he'll be doing the dishes and I'll feel
Yep.
guilty because, I should be helping him clean, but at the same time I just read like a really good chapter in a book. So I'll follow him around and tell him like word for word everything that's happening and my thoughts about it. And he's like, mm-hmm,
Mm-hmm.
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 Yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of funny because like my fiance. has read a few of my books, but like he's really not into reading. And when he does, he takes like a year to read a book. Like it is a slow process, and the amount of books and novellas I release each year, he'll never catch up. Let's be real. But
Yeah.
even still, sometimes I'll like try to like throw
Just
ideas
read
at
through.
them, but then I have to like explain what's going on, and then I'm like, at this point, you should just read the book.
Right? I'm always like, they say it so much better than I butchered it. It's better if you read it. Yeah.
Yep. Let me see. Oh, the same when War Horses. I oh Glazeover. I have not read Warhorse was a book, right? Or am I? Or am I?
Oh, it's her nickname for her husband.
Oh, that's kind of
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
that's actually
Yeah.
kind of cool. I'm not good with nicknames, pet names and stuff like that, but that's kind of cool. And the
Right.
same for Mark. Yeah, but yeah, no, it's interesting because if I talk to something that's relatable to him, all of a sudden he's into the story and he's asking me 50 questions. For instance, I gave him a project that's pertaining to the fact that I'm wrapping up actually at this point. Tomorrow will be the last day, but the Kickstarter for the third book in the series we're working on converting into audiobooks. But yeah, the Underrealms, and I was because we have this Kickstarter and I was creating this. It's really cool bonus gift for certain levels, and I was like, I'm tagging you into this. I think you'll think this is really cool. And I gave him the idea of what it is, and he was like, I'm on it. And he starts asking me all these questions. I was like, again, you could read the book now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, my husband, he doesn't like listen to any of my work, which is,
Mm-hmm.
and it's funny. So I was asking one time, I was like, can you just give me feedback before I post this? Like if it sounds bad or good. And he'll always like listen and go like to that little snippet and be like, I mean, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then so one day I'm like, "Well, you've never heard any of the stuff I do or any of the voices I do." And he's like, "You do realize that you don't have like a triple walled studio that and my bedroom's literally like right next to me." And he's like, "I hear you every morning at 4 a.m. doing every single voice and your warm-ups and all your weird stuff and when I get and so like there'll be times and so I just sat there I was like, "Oh, you can hear all of that." Like he's like, "Mm-hmm."
Well, then he's kind of gone, and I think that would be, I think that that's the approach if I offered the audiobooks for my fiance to listen to. He would probably enjoy that because every time when I was listening to the files that you sent me or George for my other series sends me, he'll like pause and he'll be like asking me about what's going on or this particular character, and then he goes and he'll come back and like pause for a second. So I think he's more interested. He would be more interested in that, but kind of like me, we have that bad habit of not utilizing audiobooks in ways that we could. And he drives
Right.
around all the time. He's definitely one of those people that he could put it on when he's driving to and from sales calls.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's see. I see a comment popping up says my husband reads, but he doesn't read what I do. Hey, that's fair. That's fine. To each their own. He will totally ask about my books. I love it. But yeah, I mean, everybody has their taste in something, and I do realize that. Like, I have not read any of the Dresden Files, but all his bookshelves are full of Jim Butcher's work, and I'm sure I would possibly enjoy it. Well, I say I'll possibly enjoy it. I'm not sure until I try it, but
Right.
I haven't yet because I like my own stuff.
Yeah.
So let me ask, as an audiobook narrator, for people who are curious, how many times, I know this is probably a question you may get a lot, how many times do you read the book that you're working on? Because I know as the author, I've read it like 1,002 plus 1,002 times before it gets released. But how many times do you, or what's your process of reading and prep work as you're heading into the recording
Yeah,
process?
so like if when someone approaches me and asks me to do a book, I will be like, okay, let me look into it, and then I will skim read it really quickly just to see the vibe, the characters, and then I'll slow down and read a couple parts here and there, just to make sure that there's nothing in the book that I'm not comfortable narrating. And then I will go through and to do the audition and get some character notes and whatnot, and then do the 15-minute thing. And
Mm-hmm.
at that point, that's kind of like where I start really prepping. Once I get the okay on the 15 minutes or okay on the like how, because me and you were communicating a little bit differently. We were emailing back and forth about characters and what you wanted to hear and that kind of stuff. And so by that point, it was like the 15 minutes was more or less like, okay, I'll just throw something in there and, has a couple different character voices. Um, And then I will sit down and prep the book. That's where I sit down and I read it and I'll highlight stuff. That's also where I start thinking of voices and looking people up on YouTube because I'm a mimicker. Uh,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so people who have I when I was younger it was called Asperger's, but now it's like
Mhm.
highly functioning autism. And so for me to adapt to people and not come off as the person who just sat in the corner staring at people, I had to learn how to kind of mimic how other people behaved and talked and whatnot.
Mhm.
And so I like to watch people on YouTube or actors on YouTube. So when you gave me the list of like, I think this character is kind of like this person and this actor, and I would sit there and I would read through and listen to them and watch them on YouTube, watch how they move their throats and their face, like the way their mouths formed words, to try and get it down. And then I would, go in the studio, and after I've prepped all that, I sit down and for in the studio, I always love watching other narrators because they'll read you a story and you get really pulled in and you're like, oh, and I can't do live readings because I do it more like a theater style where I pause a lot. I'll read a line and then I'll listen to it again and I'm like, okay, well, it feels like it's missing something. Like it feels like the message wasn't conveyed in that word, and then I'll say it a bunch of different ways. Um, so sometimes, so when I gave you the like projected project timeline, it was like, it's going to be months out. And that's
Yeah.
just because, especially with like fantasy characters and different voices and voice switch ups. I think there was one time where I was arguing with King Castor because I was trying to do the beaver voice, and Arsum, the owl voice, kept popping in there. It would like slowly morph by the end of the sentence. And so my husband was like, I heard you yelling at because I kept saying, be the beaver. And then
Be the beaver.
be the
Right over.
beaver. And then I'd pull it up on YouTube and I'd play it again and I'd try again. And finally I got it and I was like, okay. It was just like that day where it was just kept slipping and it would just go right back to Arsum. And I'm like, no. So
No.
yeah, so then after I prep, I do the character work and I do a lot of different takes. And
Mhm.
so for me, recording takes a lot longer just because, I want to make sure that the voice came out right.
Mhm.
Hmm.
No, I was gonna say it's always interesting and like, um, I'm sure just like with writing and on the author side of things, that narrators have so many different approaches on styles on how they create their work. Because when going back to the concept of like, yeah, I've heard narrators do at least snippets of live readings, and I understand that hesitancy to do that on your end because for me, when someone's like, "Oh, you're a writer, you create stories, just tell me a story," I'm like, it's not like that. I do so much editing and so much back and forth to make it sound the way I want it to sound. I don't just, it's not off the cuff. And there are
Hmm.
people who can do that. I applaud you, but I am not one.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'll like listen to other narrators go live and I'm like, "Oh, that looks like so much fun." Getting to know them and listening. And then I will go hop in here, I'll sit down and I'll push live and I'll like read 4 or 5 lines and I'm like sweating and shaking and I can't
No.
think of the character voices and I'm like, and then I'll literally just like ghost. I'm like, I close it and I'm like, "Oh man, that was awful." So,
Well, I
yeah.
think your friendly fan group agrees that or agrees to disagree with you. They think you're amazing.
Yeah. And they're also kind. They know that I can't like do lives and type at the same time. And
Hey,
so if you
that's
see
fine.
like
I've
one word
never figured.
responses,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I've never figured out how to, do what you're doing where you kind of type in there. But because again, I'm going to probably repurpose this on YouTube for people who are curious about the narration side and the relationship between narrator and author on things. Um, that's why I'm kind of reading out some of these comments that pop in here periodically so
Yeah.
people know what we're referring to.
Yeah.
After the fact. Um, Talking about comment one says, looking into doing an audio version, what kind of rates are common in your line of work? Ooh, good question. Do you want to do this one or have me do it?
Sure, sure. The common rate is usually around 250, and that's
Mm-hmm.
just because getting it the engineers like they charge a certain rate, and if you to make a
250.
living for audiobooks.
Sorry, I'm gonna cut in here. 250 per what they called finish hour. So hour of finalized listening time, not for the whole
Mhm.
book. Okay, continue.
Right, right. Yeah, because per finish hour, the average time is about 8 working hours.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And so, to make a living and to pay the editors and to do all that fun stuff, it gets a little pricey. But then there's also like write share, which is what I do. Is I do write share because one, I do record slower than the average narrator, and two, also I'm a stay-at-home mom, and so for me, this was like 15 years of not doing what you love and not being in theater. It got to the point where I was, my husband's like, you seem almost like a shell of yourself. And I was like,
Oh, you need to do what you love.
yeah, like I didn't have an outlet. And so then when I got into the audiobook narrating, he's been so supportive about it because he's like, hey, you take the time during the day or whenever you need it to get this outlet and to get this theater thing. And his only request is that, if I need to pick up the kids or get them to sports, or if one of them's sick, I'm still the stay-at-home mom. So for me, it's like I do it because I want to be able to pick the books that I am going to narrate. If I'm going to spend hours, getting my heart and soul, happy, I want it to be with something that I really, really enjoy reading. And so, I had gotten a couple emails throughout the summer that were like, hey, are you available to, narrate books? And I was like, my studio's not set up. Thank you for thinking of me. And then when I read yours, I was like, I called in the whole troops. I was like, guys, we need to get panels and we need to get the thing set back up and we got to get this done because I want to do this book. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're gonna make me blush. But yeah, and like as the author looking into audiobook narrators, there are three approaches. One of them is
Mhm.
to do it yourself, which I'm not skilled into doing the voices. I don't have the setup. I don't have the skills and knowledge on sound editing, so that was a no-go for me. Because I have three series and all three of them are being converted separately by different narrators. I've kind of played around with a whole variety of things. So yes, we are doing what they call that split royalty or that share, which means all the royalties that we get, which is 40% cut, we split 20 and 20
Mhm.
for a number of years. And so that's how this one plays out. But that does help you if you're a new author and don't have the budget to pay in full a narrator.
Mhm.
I do think most narrators prefer the other way actually because they want to make sure they make the money and get what they
Yep.
deserve from all the effort.
Mhm.
Because as you were saying, it's a lot of time. It's a lot
Yeah.
of things you're doing behind the scenes to make it sound pretty. And I think, like you were saying, that 250 is that standard, or as what KDP or ACX says, is their recommended minimal rate. There have been people who did private agreements to do less, and it can go up. It can become very, very expensive depending on, if they're professional actors or whatnot that you're getting to narrate your book. So do understand that, kind of run the math yourself when you're thinking about what way you want to do some research, talk to some narrators. There are a bunch on here. Hello.
Mhm. Yeah. 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 It's pretty cool how many there are.
do
Mhm.
you use, I actually have not noted, so I feel bad about this, do you use a hashtag to inform people that you're an audiobook narrator when you post on this platform?
I haven't. Every time I post something, I think to myself, I should have probably used that hashtag, but you can't edit it once you're done.
Yeah, I know.
So,
That is one thing I wish they did allow you to go back and edit because mistakes can be made. I've done a couple of those too. But yeah, I know there are a lot of hashtags, so that's another thing. Check hashtags on different media. This one is a
yep.
great one because you can actually communicate, see, and listen to examples, and I think that's
Mhm.
cool. And
Yeah.
I know for you, you're really good about creating promo videos of the snippets of your stuff. I'm very bad about that. And but yes, for me, when I'm trying to promote an audio, and this can make you cringe, the way I try to promote audiobooks for like samples is I usually get the narrator and um to give me a couple of different number of different mini samples of like certain segments, excerpts that I really liked. But the problem is they come in files and I download them on the computer. And I've said this before to some people that the way I get them onto this platform is then I play it on the computer when it's dead silent at the house, put the the phone next
Right.
to the computer. And so for me, mine never sound that clean when I'm trying to represent it. I'm like, I promise, if you like this, you'll love the book. It sounds so much better. But yeah, I mean, you're pretty good about how to create those little videos for stuff that you're working on.
Yeah, I
So,
try and save them to like I think I shared the drive with you.
mhm.
And so that's always like my go-to is like I save it to my drive because then I have it on my phone and I have it on my computer and because for this app you can't really connect with your computer very easily.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it's a little tough. It's a little tough.
Yeah.
But you're learning. And if anybody has better techniques, let us know because I love learning new tricks to become better,
Right.
improve self.
Hmm.
Let me see. You have to create the video with a separate program. Well, I know CapCut's one of those that people are using now. I'm still
Hmm.
rather unfamiliar with that. I kind of piggyback on other people.
Hmm.
Add the audio. See, good idea. Good idea. I wonder maybe I should play with CapCut more and do more of
It's
those because you
fun.
do a number of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It gets addicting. While like my kids are doing gymnastics and stuff, I'll make the promo videos and
I love it. I love it. Using
hmm
your time efficiently. So
hmm
let me ask you, because you are a mom and you're raising kids and you're doing the narration and you have a lot of things going on your end and cosplaying when you can,
yeah.
do you read a lot of stuff or, listen to a lot of audiobooks in your spare time? Or is that, a luxury that it's kind of like me? I try to do it, but that's usually the last thing I have time for.
Right. Yeah, I kind of if I just left myself to my own devices, I would be all over the place and get nothing done. So I literally have to it's not my personality type, but I've learned over the years to make planners and color code, which is funny because, I have my Google Calendar but
Mhm,
I always forget to look at it and then I'll be like missing appointments and missing everything. So I've actually
mhm,
learned like a paper planner is the best way for me to schedule things and color code things. And so I will actually schedule in like my narration time. So I'm like, okay, I'm narrating from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. and then I get the kids up, I get them to school. And then I come home and I have coffee while I read for a little bit to kind of let my brain, it's quiet. No, my husband just like went out to his office. And so it's like, I don't have anybody talking to me. And so then that's when I do like my relaxing reading.
mhm.
And then I'll hop back in the studio and record for a little bit. At that point, I will kind of pop back out. I do a lot of driving. So I do about 4 hours of driving a day.
Wow, that's a lot of
So
driving.
yeah, so I listen to a lot of audiobooks. And so if something's not on audio, that's where I get a little sad. I'm like, man.
See, this is why I'm trying to do better.
Yeah.
Thank you for helping me be better.
Right. Yeah. So I do 4 hours of driving a day. So lots and lots of audiobook listening to. And then every once in a while I will have Alexa read me. Like if there is no audiobook, I will have Alexa read me the book while I'm driving because I just can't find the time to read at home. And that one I love the stories, but when you're listening to Alexa, sometimes two characters are talking and it's like you're trying to be like, wait, who's saying that? Who said that part? Or
Mhm.
I love the part where she says something like emotional, and like somebody was like, and then he said hermp ermph, and I was like, hermp ermph. What does hermp ermph mean? And I was like trying to picture it in my eyes, like if I was reading a book, I was like, oh, humph, like humph, right?
Oh,
Yeah. So that's always fun. But yeah, so I really schedule out my time just because
mhm.
I do want to fit in reading and I do want to fit in like fitting in listening to audiobooks is pretty easy. Um, and so I devour those. But like pleasure reading is something I have to actually sit down and schedule.
Mhm.
And I remember one time I was reading a book and my 15-year-old was talking to me and I
Mhm.
tried and schedule like we sit down and we watch a show. Like we watched all of Supernatural and that was like our thing was like we'd have our
That's
Supernatural
a
time.
dedication right there. That's
Yeah,
a lot of seasons.
it was. It was like 2 years of us being like Supernatural time. And then and so then he was talking to me during my reading time. And I
Mhm.
didn't want to be like rude.
Mhm.
But it's also my only reading time, so I kept looking at him going, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Finally, I was like,
Mhm.
oh, I had to do like the fake yawn and like, oh, I'm so tired. Well, good luck with your homework. I'm gonna go lay in bed. And he's like,
Yep.
okay. So I go downstairs and my husband's sitting down there and he's like in bed scrolling on his phone. And he's like, oh, you never read in bed because you say it hurts your neck. I'm like, no, I'm coming down here so that I can read in quiet. And he's like, okay. And he starts telling me about his day, and I'm like, yeah. So yeah, I,
Oh
I
no.
schedule things.
Oh yeah, I understand. Yeah, there are those moments. I feel like it's the times when I'm trying to concentrate the most that someone else wants to communicate with you, and I don't know what it is where. why. I don't know why it happens, but yeah, it is true. It's like you want those quiet times, you want those personal down times, and then that's when someone else has to be like, let me tell you about your day. Let
Yep.
me
And
share this with
it's never when you're like quietly doing nothing.
you. Hmm.
They wait for you
Exactly.
to pick up the book.
That's true. It is the signal. Now we can talk. No. Please no. I get that. No. And you are an early bird then. You keep saying 4 in the morning. I consider myself a morning person in the sense that as soon as my alarm goes off, I'm awake. I can do whatever. I don't take any moments to like get, be groggy. I am awake and ready to hit the day. So in that sense, I feel like I'm a morning person, but I am not a 4 a.m. morning person. So kudos
Yeah.
to you to be able to do that. That is I give you some props. Do you sleep? Let me ask that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nope, that is cool that you're able to structure everything that way. So how many hours a day do you try to record?
Usually about 4 to 5 hours in the studio.
Yeah. And
Um,
that's a lot. That's a lot for your voice. I do an hour on this and then like my voice gets scratchy.
yeah, I always have my tea and yeah, just enjoying it. And I do listen to my body, so there have been times where like if I have to do like a high squeaky mouse voice followed by a polar bear voice over and over again, my voice will start getting more like tired, not sore, but like the muscles. It's almost like if you've done too many sit-ups and you try and get your range back up there, and your voice is just like it won't do it. And so that's also I think why recording at 4 a.m. is really nice because I haven't used my voice at all yet, and so I'm able to do a lot more.
Uh-huh.
I went back and for the dragon voice because I was like, I think for the polar bear for Valir, my voice I was like at pretty much the lowest it would go, but for the dragon I really wanted it to sound like dragony. And so I did. I woke up at 4, and I for the day before I didn't talk to anyone, and I just kept saying to my family, and because I told them my plan was to go back and any of the I wrote down every single dragon line and the timestamps, and then at 4 a.m. I hopped in my studio with my warm tea and my warm like little, you know, bag
Yeah.
of rice, and I got the mic really close, and then I did all those like one after the other just so that
Mhm.
my voice wouldn't have been used at all and it was a lot more like loose so it can get deeper. So,
That's so cool.
yeah.
Hello, hello. But yeah, no, I mean, I again, these are kind of things that I find fascinating when I'm talking to someone from a different facet of the book and publishing community. And audiobook narration is really, see, I would never have thought about doing that. I would never have thought about, planning to do it first thing and kind of prepping the fact your voice so you can hit the different ranges and everything. Would never have thought about that. So let me ask you, because you are a tea drinker, and I've noticed this in a couple of your videos. You've talked about this, and obviously just a moment ago. I have seen, and a lot of people in the bookish community like those custom tea blends that pair with books. So after doing this book, if you had to do a custom tea blend, what would you choose? Because that may be something fun down the road to promote this series, is having the Jed Chronicles tea or the 12 Tasks or whatnot, or what would
Right.
you choose?
I would probably do like an oolong with like hibiscus. So it's kind of got like a flowery flavor, but also like that because oolong has like a honey, almost to me, it has like a honey flavor almost, like an earthy honey flavor. And so I would do that because then it's like flowery, but it also gives you a little kick because oolong has quite a bit of caffeine.
Hey, there you go. I like that. So the 12 tasks, you pair it with oolong. I
Mhm.
love it. I think I
Yep.
actually have some oolong. I have to now have to do that. I'll be listening to your clips and drinking that side by side and seeing the comparison. And yeah, it's a couple comments popping up saying, I guess referring to your voice of trying to hit those different ranges, of trying to do like the opposite of helium when you're trying to get deeper and bolder
Right.
voices. But yeah, and I have another one asking. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Yeah. And Katharine, would you be open to do a collab writing book together, possibly? As for collabs, I'm open to the idea. The question is scheduling and how the functionality of that works. Because I've never done one before, I would have to wrap my head around how that would work. And but yeah, the opportunity, I'm keeping it open. But yeah, scheduling. And I know the next couple of years, I'm doing the big push. I'm trying to wrap up my Viking series that I'm releasing 4 of those novellas a year, or try to, and then continuing through releasing books of my young adult series. So that's
Mm-hmm.
steadily going forward. So once I get through some of that push, I can hopefully breathe a little better.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I listened to the Viking one and I loved it. It was just like his voice is so everything he says sounds like it's poetry. And I was just
I
like,
know.
oh, I loved it. Yeah.
Part of me, I'm like, I know it's possibly because I'm American and I'm listening to someone with an accent, and there is something to say when you have an accent. You're like, hello.
Right? Yep.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's like there's something with the accent. You're like, well, I like that. That's different. Say that again. But yeah,
Right.
it is interesting. It is very interesting. And here in the U.S., I mean, we have so many accents ourselves. It is um kind of cool because I remember going. It's been a moment now. Through the platform for selecting your narrator, some of the stuff you can pick is accents and
Mhm.
even regional accents within the United States of a narrator, and trying to figure that out because that does have an effect on how you say certain words
Mhm.
and everything.
Yeah, definitely. And like so and it's so funny because a lot of times kind of like what you mean you had talked about for Katie's voice, um like learning a certain accent and then toning it down so it sounds like they've been living in the States for, like, because if you listen to different regions nowadays, a lot of Minnesotans don't sound like what you
Yeah,
would
what you're.
think a Minnesotan would sound like.
Mm-hmm.
But they do have some of the little giveaways where the voice or the words like about is not about, it's a boat, you
Yeah,
know? And
exactly.
so little things like that where like you're trying to make it sound natural. And the last book I did was in like a Northern Irish accent. All the main characters were Northern Irish, but
Wow.
the author wanted it to sound like you couldn't quite tell what was there. Like you might listen to it and think, do they have an accent? Right?
Mm-hmm.
But it came out when they got angry. And so I hired someone from Northern Ireland to listen through and write down everything I was doing wrong or what I need to do better. And honestly, I would just listen to him critique me. I'd like play it in my ear and just be like, oh, he sounds so good.
Yeah,
And
no, there is something about, interesting accents. And I'm again, my the series we're working on is that multiverse. So trying to come up with accents that sound like unique characters, but don't necessarily point directly to very, or at least very strongly to an accent from Earth. I don't know if that's hard for you or not when you're creating some of them, but because you do a variety of character voices.
yeah,
But
there was I think you had like 30 characters.
mhm,
Um
there's
yeah, and that
at
was
least
fun.
one
It was
of the main characters.
right. And I would comfort myself by being like, okay, they're in Tyrion. So
Yep.
if someone's like, well, their accent didn't sound authentic. It was like, well, have you heard an in Tyrion before?
Have you talked to a beast
Right?
entity before?
Yep,
What do they sound like?
exactly, yeah. And it was
But yeah.
fun because there was different planets that you had, and so it was kind of like thinking through, like, okay, well, if so and so, like, I think it was like chapter 15, where one of the characters doesn't sound like everybody else on that planet, and so it kind of is a giveaway that something's up there.
Hmm.
So it was kind of fun to be like, okay, well, then everybody else on this planet is going to have this accent, except for this person, so that it kind of gives people like that, like, why do they sound different? You know?
And I see a little comment pop up. Well, a couple saying hi to everybody, and then one says couldn't stop listening to the 12 tasks. So good. Yay! I'm glad. It's I give a lot of the credit to her to making it come alive because again, it's just something that just I cannot wrap my head around. I wish I could be better about it, but that's why I hire the pros. But
Yeah,
yeah, talking about that accent thing and going back to the Guardian speaker, since George is from England and he was trying to do Scandinavian accents predominantly, and of course he kept his British accent for just the narrator's voice. But but yeah, it was interesting working with someone from a different country who's a narrator, because the way American English and a way British English works, a lot of stuff is very similar, and then there are certain words that sound very different, and they're the same word, we just say them drastically different. And sorry, George, if you ever listen to this one, I'm going to point it out because it's so funny. We did have a little debate, because in the latest one that came out, the third book or novella for the Guardian Speaker, I was using the fact that there is a geyser of water that shoots up at one point. And in British English, it's not pronounced geyser, it's pronounced geezer, which here in the States means something very different. So it sounded to me like an old man shooting up into the sky. And I was like,
Right.
we need to change this. He's like, but that's what you say. I'm like, no, that's what you say.
Right.
But it needs to be changed. You can keep a lot of the stuff, that needs to be changed.
Yeah. That one word doesn't really.
Now, talking about making corrections in audiobooks, how hard is it to do? Because I know we talk a lot about timestamps, and if people don't understand, that literally is the minute and second kind of stamp of time where you're splicing beginning or end of, whatever you're referencing. And so when I'm asking for excerpts, I'm doing chapter 30, 1 minute and 32 seconds to 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And that's what I want taken out. Like, how hard is it for you to edit after you've done your recording? If I'm, for someone like me being like, can we change that?
Right. So for your book, I did a lot of the editing before I sent it to you to put onto the files for you to listen to. Normally it'll be just like I record it, it's all on file, it gets proofed and listened through for pickups, and then it will, after everything's done, it gets sent off to be mastered, where they take out like the mouth clicks, they clean up the background audio so it sounds good in your ears. So what I would do is I would just run it through, because I have the programming, and I would run it through just to get it to a point where it was easy to listen to, even if I didn't get all the mouth sounds out. And then when you gave me feedback like, oh, can we change that? Or can, we do a different, voice or accent? I just hop in, I re-record over it, and then I bounce that. And then I literally just highlight that part in RX, copy it, and then paste over the other part.
See, that sounds so complicated. It sounds like way too many steps. Oh my goodness. But that is, again, that's very impressive. And I do know of a couple authors who are either considering attempting to do it all themselves. And I'm always wowed on your side of things.
Yeah.
On how. Sorry, yes.
Oh, I was gonna say it's one of those things where like I kept messaging you and I was like, don't feel bad about telling me to redo it or to try again. Like, it doesn't hurt. I have very thick skin. In theater, I had some directors who would just yell at you and be like, you're doing it wrong, try again. And so for me, I'm like, if it didn't convey what you wanted it to convey, because words said a different way can mean a completely different thing. I'm always trying to tell the authors I work with, like, don't be shy. Tell me, like, can you try it again, but like this? And I had an author actually send me a video clip of them being like, you need to sound more like snarky and mean. You sound too nice when you're saying this line. And I was like, okay. And so they actually recorded themselves, sent it to me, and we're like, try and sound a little more like that. And I was like, okay. It never hurts my feelings. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That makes me feel a little better, because I always feel bad about like making other work for other people. On the other hand, yeah, everybody wants, especially, if you're an author, you want your characters to sound like or be expressed the way, at least close to the way you hear them, if you have that gift of hearing voices. And again, strangely, I get the gist of their voices, but never as clearly as someone who then makes them come to life. But let me think. I think we're covering a lot of things. Is there anything you want to talk about before we wrap up today that we haven't covered? Where can people find and follow you if they are jumping in and they don't know you? Where can people find and follow you on your journey as a narrator / cosplayer?
Yeah. So far, TikTok is the place that I'm most active on, which is funny because before you, I was like, I'm never going to join TikTok. Like I was someplace I was not going to go. I was like, nope. Uh, and then I found book talk and cosplay talk, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, and so this is where I post everything. Yeah, pretty much everything. Yeah.
Oh, there you
Oh,
go.
thank you.
That is awesome. I have not seen that one before. That's fantastic. But oh, there we go. That's fantastic. That makes me laugh.
Thank you.
Books and beer. I like that. Books and beer. Yes.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely
My
love it.
question
But
for
yeah, no,
you,
sorry, yeah.
sorry. I was very curious because you in your book you preface by saying that this was a world you created with you and your sister. And so I was curious about that, like like running through and creating this world as a kid. When did you come back and revisit it and like make it into this? Because it really is, as I said, it does feel like Lord of the Rings and Stargate for me because I'm a huge
I
Stargate fan.
reposted that video you created because again, I'm not that creative when it comes to video editing, but I reposted that today on my platform. Your references, what vibes you got out of it. But thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, the whole series, and a lot of the characters that came out of it, and a lot of the characters you'll meet as you go forward, were at least preliminarily created during imaginary play with my sister when we were children, because lived in the country, we were homeschooled also, so during times that we weren't actively in school or whatnot, and um, not hanging out with some of our local friends, we were outside just goofing off. And so during during that, we were creating all these characters. And so that is why my main character um has shares my name, is because she was my alter ego. I genuinely wanted to be her so bad. And she had all the things, skills at that point that I wanted to possess. And my sister's character, I don't know if she considered her alter ego or not. I'll have to ask her one day. But I know that was the one she went back to a lot, and she transformed into the wannabe sorceress, the homeschooled witch character, is my sister's character that I kind of based off of her and tweaked along the way. But it was a lot of fun because no matter what we were doing, even if it was us running around, actively running around, jumping around in the forest and fields, or we would play with Beanie Babies. Please don't sue me, Beanie Baby people. But like playing with Beanie Babies, and actually that's the one of the offshoots of the Natura people, were the Beanie Babies that we played with and those characters, and then running around and doing another world because we would play with another set of toys, and that was another world that was being developed, and etc. So on. So a lot of the basics, like the very core basics, came from way younger when we were really young, but yeah, because I was so passionate about this character and the concepts, and it was hard for me. I'm one of those people who don't like to grow up, so I would have continued to. You tell me you want to play the game, let's play the game.
Right.
Even my age right now, but
Mhm.
yeah, no, I always wanted to. I realized I wanted to very early on share it with the world. I think at like 13, I wrote like the first 3 chapters. Had to scrap probably all of that, but I wrote the first 3 chapters because I was like, I'm going to publish one day. I'm going to share these stories with other people, and just put it in the back burner until relatively recently. Like, I ended up publishing Asara's Claws and the entire Incarn Saga series first, but I wanted to do that specifically because for 2 reasons. One, the story I couldn't get out of my head at the time, and two, I was hesitant to start writing the 12 tasks until I figure out my writing voice, figured out the process. I wanted to do it at least halfway justice. So I did wait around for a while before going back to the series. But yeah, the third book's about to release in March. Kickstarter runs through tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for that one, where if people want the hard copy versions, uh, I'm sending them out with lots of goodies. But obviously, the audiobook for the first one's out, and it's fantastic. And I have not asked, so don't answer me. Consider it. But if you do want to continue, let me know, because I hope you do. But think about it, consider it. But yeah, so the fact that now it's actually out as an audiobook it just makes me so happy that people can enjoy it in all the formats.
Right. Yeah, no, I loved it. And one of the people who was commenting earlier, so she listened to the audiobook and then she loved the story so much that she went and she bought your other book and now she's waiting for your third one.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
cool. I love
Hmm.
that. That makes me feel happy. And hopefully you're enjoying the story because that's one thing is this series is very different than I think a lot of other book series in a couple ways. Yes, we're dealing with a multiverse, but it is one where the characters age up dramatically. So you start at 13. That is pretty young for like someone who's an adult who might like the older side of young adult, but to say you have a character and pitch it, she starts at 13, people are like a little hesitant about, but it is one that each book is practically a year apart from each other. So you are
Hmm.
going to age up. Sorry, I have a little timer that popped up. Dramatically, and the maturity level of the kids, goes up a lot, and the complexity of the stories evolve too along with that. But I was going somewhere else, and then I lost my train of thought with the age process. But it is. But oh, the other one is each book is kind of has a different and unique vibe too, which some people might like, some people might not like as much. The first one's definitely quest based, and you have 12 tasks on 12 worlds to prove if or is she or is she not this prophesied hero, or in her case heroine, for this magical multiverse. And then obviously when the quests are done, what do you go next? And so the second one does have a little bit of a different distinction, and each one has its own unique flair. So hopefully people
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess that's pretty cool. Like I said, if anybody out there has any questions for us while we're still on, or again any other topics you would like us to cover pertaining to anything, let us know in the next little bit. But I'm just so glad to actually finally meet you.
I know, it's been fun to chat with you. Um, on Audible.
Yes, Audible, and I think they also put it on iTunes. I've never checked because I don't use iTunes, but they always say through ACX, Audible, iTunes, and of course you can find the link for the audiobook, the Audible audiobook on Amazon proper too on the page.
Yeah.
And if you can also find it through my links page on my profile, you can get there. And I promise you, somewhere in that big scroll is a link to this particular audiobook too. Try to make it as accessible as possible.
Yep.
And I hope you enjoyed if you listen to it. She has a fantastic voice, or voices. Plethora of voices. That's great. But yeah, thank you for coming out and doing this. I've been wanting to kind of chit chat with you, and I've been excited about the fact that it's finally now released and out into the world. And we just now have to
Hmm.
keep our ears open and find ways to let people know it's there, because I think that's one of the hardest things, at least for me as an author. I'm still fairly new as an audiobook author, as in the first book I released that was an audiobook was last year in kind of the summer. And so like all platforms, you have to make your presence known and let people know I'm on there. You can find my stuff there as well, and try to find new ways to reach those type of readers, because audiobook people might not read print or might not ever pick up an ebook. And so yeah, it's one of those, you just have to find those pockets. So
Right.
if you
And
are an
that's what the
audiobook,
hashtags.
yes,
I gotta get better at using the hashtags.
yes.
So I'm like,
And that's what I try to be aware of too, and trying to figure out how to categorize that and reach the right readers for that format. Dun dun
mhm.
dun.
Yeah.
I love it. So let me ask you one more question, and then I guess we can wrap up. Do you ever, and this may be just totally different, I don't know, it just popped in my head. Do you ever listen to or create a soundtrack that you listen to when you're trying to get in a mood of recording? I know as an author, people ask me that a couple times or here and there will be, do you listen to a certain type of music when I'm writing? And I don't know for a narrator what your answer would be. Do you?
Yeah.
Do you not?
I guess for me it's more about like watching shows, little snippets of shows that kind of have that feel, that vibe. Because then I can kind of, I don't know, I guess like it drops you into that world. So for me that's more or
Mm-hmm.
less how I get into it is I watch little videos or movies, or I'll go back and watch like an episode of something that really kind of pulls me in and gives me that epic feel. As far as music goes, I'm really like I get distracted very easy by audio, and I'm one of those people I can't fall asleep to music. I have to
Same.
be careful if I'm, yeah, it's just because my music really pulls my brain in,
Mhm.
and it's like you can really feel the music. So if I'm trying to read, I also don't have music on, only because I end up like my brain pulls over to the music, or it
Mhm.
like fights for it, the
Oh
space.
yeah.
So music for me is more like in the shower or in the car if I'm going to be singing. It's my karaoke time sometimes, little things like that. But yeah, so for me, getting in the mood is more like watching a video clip.
Okay, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I do create soundtracks or accompanying music, but I never listen to it when I'm writing. I have to be in a full, quiet, solid, just me zone. I can't do that. There are authors who jam out when they're writing. I'm like, I can't do that. I can't write in public. It has to just be super focused. But I do have these playlists designed because when I'm trying to get in the mood of writing or editing
Hmm.
or I'm just or anything pertains to the book outside of actively writing new material, I like listening to it because it kind of gets you just in that mood, and so that's what it works for
Yep.
me. But again, not when I'm writing like new material. I can't do that. I wish I
Right.
could, but I can't.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for joining
Oh, thank you
today.
for
And if
having
you ever
me.
want to, yeah, if you ever want to do another one of these, I feel like it's always easier to do a live when you're talking to someone than do it on your own. I'm
Yeah.
trying to be better
Yeah.
about these solo ones, but yeah. So if you ever want to do another one of these and talk about whatever project you're on, it's just cool. And I think there are a lot of people interested on your side of things because they may hear a lot of authors, but it's nice to also learn from the narration side of things. And I absolutely love it. And if anybody is interested on talking about a little further, more in depth of the Jet Chronicle series, tomorrow I have a live because it's my farewell to my Kickstarter party. It's a solo live, but it'll be a farewell to my Kickstarter party at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I know that's a weird time, but that was what was recommendable on Kickstarter to end it at 4. And I'm like, I'm not sure I like this, but we're trying it out. But I'll be back, and I know that's what a lot of I'll be talking about is the series, its progression, this upcoming third book, and fun stuff that way.
Awesome.
Yeah, so everybody else, thank you for joining, and I know we will both see some of you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.